Okay, welcome back in for the first time in the playoffs. Unfortunately, if I'm doing the review, that means they probably didn't make it too far when it came to the postseason. So I'm going to be looking at the back-to-back NFC South champions. That's right, 4 times in a row, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have won the NFC South. Two, obviously, with Tom Brady, and the last two with Baker Mayfield, respectively. So this team is used to having success, and more importantly, used to being in the postseason. So let's take a look at their schedule from this past year. So they started the season off winning their first 2 games. They lost game 3 to the Broncos, 1-1, lost 1, 1-1. And then unfortunately, after they beat the Saints week number 6, they would go on a 4-game losing streak heading into the week 11 bye. So obviously, you never want to go on a losing streak, and you sure don't want to go on a losing streak heading into your bye week. Definitely hurts your momentum. But with a good rest, they ended up coming back, winning 4 games in a row to make up for the 4 games that they lost previously. They would lose in Week 16 to the Dallas Cowboys, but they would win out the remaining two games against the Panthers and the Saints, respectively, um, clinching, like I said, the NFC South crown on the very last week of the football season. So I might as well just show this little thing too, and then I'll get on to it. So they would make the playoffs. They would host the Washington Commanders in the wild card round, but unfortunately, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, they would lose 23-20 at home. So they were basically one and done when it came to the postseason, which is a shame because this was a good team, and I was honestly rooting for like a Buccaneers and Eagles divisional round matchup. Unfortunately, it never came to be. Tampa Bay obviously won their their wild card game last year against the Eagles, so it would have been like a rematch or a rubber match had they played in the divisional round. And then I think last year they lost in Detroit in the divisional round as well. So um, aside from them winning the Super Bowl back in the 2020-21 season, they made 2 divisional round matchups, lost both of those, and they haven't been back to the big dance ever since then. So will they get it next year? There's a lot of good teams. NFC, I don't know, but anything can happen, I guess, on most given days. So you can see, take a look at the NFC South standings. You can see they finished 2 games ahead of the Atlanta Falcons with a 10-7 record. So overall, they finished third in the league in passing yards with 4,257, very impressive. Receiving yards, 4,505, and over 1,000 of those were courtesy of Mike Evans, who I think got his 11th straight 1,000-yard season, which is absurd to think because think about the quarterbacks he had in his 11 years. I'm pretty sure like Freeman was the quarterback he started out with. They had a few different ones. Obviously, had Brady for 3 years, and now Baker Mayfield. So it's crazy to think that he was consistent for 11 straight years with at least 1,000 yards receiving, with like a number of different quarterbacks. Normally, when you have different quarterbacks coming to your team, you're not going to be as effective. But it doesn't matter who is throwing the ball. Mike Evans is just going to reach up and bring that bad boy in. They finished third in first downs with 127. Rushing yards, very impressive. Fourth overall, 2,536. And points, fourth overall, 502. So out of those 5 categories, they finished at least in the top 4 of all of those. So a very good season offensively, at least for the Bucs. Defensively, sacks, they would finish 7th in the league with 46. Interceptions, they were at kind of towards the bottom of the pack with only 7 picks this past year. Forced fumbles, they were 8th with 16. And tackles, they finished 9th with 666. Special teams, field goals made, they were 15th in the league. They made 30. Field goal percentage, they were first in the league, 93.8. So not a perfect, but if you finish with the highest field goal percentage, you're probably making more field goals than you're missing. Extra points made, they would finish 4th in the league with 54. And extra point percentage, they would finish 13th in the league, 96.4. So unfortunately, they didn't make all their PATs. So now we'll scroll to the top and we'll take a look at the individual player stats. So Baker Mayfield would finish the year with 4,500 yards exactly, a 71.4% completion, 41 touchdowns to 16 interceptions. That's a pretty darn good ratio in my books. That's just well over 2 to 1, if I'm not mistaken. Mike Evans, I just talked about him, would finish with 1,004 yards. Again, 11 straight years. I can't give that guy enough props. 74 receptions and 11 touchdowns. Cade Otton, the tight end, would finish with exactly 600 receiving yards on 59 catches and 4 touchdowns. Bucky Irving, the running back, would finish with 207. Would finish with 1,122 rushing yards on 207 attempts, 8 touchdowns, and Rashad White would finish with 613 rushing yards on 144 attempts and 3 touchdowns of his own. Now we'll take a look at the defense. Kalijah Cansey, I believe, the defensive end, would finish the year with 7.5 sacks, 22 tackles, and 1 forced fumble. Levante David, definitely a veteran in this league. An inside linebacker would finish with 76 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 1 interception. Zion McCollum would finish with 2 picks, 55 tackles, and 17 pass deflections. On the special team side of things, Chase McLaughlin, the kicker, had 30 of 32 conversions, or 30 of 32, had 30 field goals on 32 attempts, which is pretty darn good, only missing 2, finishing the year 93.75 field goal percentage. And Jake Camarda, the punter, would finish with 589 yards, 13 punts, averaging around 45 yards a kick. So not too shabby for the punter. So for the Buccaneers, again, a very successful season, making the postseason for the 5th straight year, if I'm not mistaken, and the 4th time that they hosted at least one playoff game. So they're clearly doing something right down in Tampa, and it doesn't matter who the head coach is. I know before they had Bruce Arians, and now, I know he changed like 3 years ago. Oh my gosh. Todd Bowles, the head coach, he didn't have as much success in New York as he is in Tampa, and I'm sure he doesn't mind being not surrounded by snow. So that might play a bit of a factor as to why he's still sticking around in Tampa Bay. I can't really rave enough about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're just a very good team, very consistent. And I've said before, when I think of teams that should make the playoffs on a year-to-year basis, Tampa Bay is definitely up there. And going into the 2025-26 campaign, I think they are going to be favorites to win the NFC South for the 5th straight year. The only team that I can see putting up a fight might be the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this past year, it's been a little inconsistent as to who, no team, in my opinion, really ran away with the division. I mean, if it comes down to week 18 for you to decide a winner or a loser of a division, then obviously you're not really pulling away in the standings. So, again, if I had to make a prediction, Tampa should next year get the NFC South crown yet again, but don't count Atlanta out just yet. They're a young team. They're hungry. They want to end that 8-year playoff drought, and next year could be the year. It really could. But I will say this, that when it comes to the Buccaneers and the Falcons, I don't think both of these teams are making it in. I think it's going to be just like this past year where one of the two teams gets the division and the other one is likely on the outside of the playoff picture looking in, just because the NFC North, I believe, has 2 teams that are going to get in. The NFC West could have 2 teams that also get in. The NFC East could have 2 teams that get in, and that's all 3 wildcard spots just right there. So is it possible for both the Buccaneers and the Falcons to get in? Obviously, one would have to be a wildcard team while the other one hosts a playoff game, but is it realistic? I don't know. I think Atlanta, they're getting better as the years, the last couple of years, they've slowly improved, but I don't see a scenario where both the Buccaneers and Falcons make the postseason when you have the likes of the 49ers, Seahawks, Rams, and the NFC West. And then NFC North, you have the Vikings not the Vikings, but you have the Packers and the Lions. And I mean, who knows? The Vikings could be just as good next year as they were this past year. So again, you're looking at about 5 or 6 teams just right there that are more than likely have a better chance of making the playoffs than, say, the Falcons and Buccaneers, both respectively. But yeah, again, a lot of hope, a lot of positivity can come out of this. Baker Mayfield is playing like a fantastic quarterback, and I'm not trying to take a shot at the Browns organization, but I guarantee they're probably regretting that signing of Deshaun Watson. Had they known they had Baker Mayfield in their back pocket, unfortunately they threw him to the curb, and now he's just excelled since he left Cleveland. So I can't give him enough props for swallowing his pride and moving on. But if I'm a part of the Browns organization, I'm kicking myself in the ass for not bringing him back. So anyway, that's all I got to say on that subject. And as always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative as always. Until next time, and as always, take care.